Hey guys, David here and welcome to another Dark Art Guitars video. Now if you thought some of my previous builds were too similar to others that you can buy or not really original, well, this build is definitely different. This is so far outside of the norm that, it is by far my most custom build ever. Now, the client first contacted me with a rough concept of his build, and then together over the course of over a month, we worked on the design, coming up with different ideas and building a full 3D model of everything that allowed us to kind of see what it would look like together. Now, since you've probably already seen the thumbnail of this video, there's no point in trying to be mysterious about what it'll look like. The main inspiration was Lyra, that's like the Celtic harp, and that kind of dictated the shape of the body. But we didn't want to make it too much like a Lyra. It should still be a guitar, it should work like a guitar, and it should be very comfortable to play as well. Another desire of the client was for it to be a semi-hollow guitar as well as a neck through. So here you can see me starting to glue up the neck blank. I'm using some nice flint maple as well as wenge, gluing up this big old blank that will form the neck going through the entire guitar. Cut out this shape on the CNC, I go back and then I can prepare the body wings. The whole color theme for this build will be mostly natural woods. So here you can see me jointing some alder. It has a bit of character in there while still being mostly homogeneous. That way some of the other design elements won't get completely lost. In addition to the body wings, I'm also preparing kind of a top. And due to the way I'm only gluing on wings, I was able to use some more narrow pieces, so the top is actually 3-piece. But you will see that you cannot actually see most of this alder that I'm gluing up for the top, so it doesn't matter that there's additional joints in there. While gluing this up, it is very important that the bottom stays perfectly flush. On the top, it's supposed to have a slight step here. That's because I haven't cut away any of it yet. But the bottom, I'm actually not machining anymore at all. So I'm using some additional blocks, clamping on the bottom on both sides to make sure that it's perfectly flush. Then it can go back on the CNC, and I'm cutting away all the material on the top to prepare it for gluing on the additional top that goes over everything. At the same time, this also allows me to hollow out the inside of the body. As you can see, it will be a semi-hollow guitar, so both of the sides are completely hollow, while the center section with the neck has still a lot of material, so that the bridge has a nice solid point to anchor to, and the pickups are also mounted very solid. On the one hand, this reduces the weight of the entire guitar, and on the other hand, it dramatically increases the resonance and makes this kind of a semi-acoustic. So you can kind of play it acoustically. It's not super loud. It still feels more like an electric guitar, but it has some of those qualities. With the body all prepared, I cut off the rod shape of the top. The only place that is actually precise is around the neck. So this is where it locates and kind of aligns itself, and then the rest will be cut closer later. Now, while the CNC is working away here, I quickly want to talk a bit about my channel. As you might have noticed, if you are on the same channel that you've always watched, it has been renamed to Dark Art Workshop instead of Dark Art Guitars. And that is because I've started a new channel where I will post all of these guitar builds, and it will just be focused on guitar building. On this channel, Dark Art Guitars Workshop, or just Dark Art Workshop, I will focus more on kind of the behind the scenes about the CNC machines, 3D printers, and all of the other stuff that I used to do on this channel, but kind of slightly neglected lately because I didn't want to mix the guitar building too much with heavy, more engineering content. So I've decided to split it up into 2 channels. So please make sure, go check below that you are subscribed to the main channel, Dark Art Guitars, as you probably aren't if you're watching this just from your subscription feed. This video is posted as kind of a collab so that it gets shown to both channels, but any future guitar builds will just be on the main channel. And here on this channel, I have quite a lot of exciting content planned about upgrading my CNC, and there will also be a kind of workshop tour video coming up very soon. So you can see that after completing the machining on the top, I was able to flip it over. And on this build, actually, coincidentally, the level where the fretboard gets glued on, as well as the raised section on the top, is at the same plane. So I was able to use that to get it held down to the CNC bed. And then I can machine the back. And with that done, the CNC machining for the body is basically done. All the rest will be handwork, and believe me, there is still a lot of work left to do. But before we get to that, let's hop back over to the CNC and now actually the laser attachment. What you can see me doing here is engraving some stone veneer. This is very thinly sliced actual sandstone that has been put on a backer so it is a bit more stable. And here I'm engraving a design into it. And this will actually become the top of the guitar. So the entire center section that I cut away before, this is what will go there. Using this 40 watt opt laser, I can actually both engrave the stone as well as kind of cut through it because it is so thin. Now, I did not quite do enough passes. I should have just run an extra pass, but I thought it was through. On the test piece I did, it only required these 2 passes, but since this is actual stone, it varies quite a bit, and there are some areas that are a bit thicker, others that are a bit thinner, and the backing piece is quite hard to cut. It's kind of a cloth infused with resin, but using an X-Acto knife, I was able to get all of it off. Then the last thing to do on the robot is to prepare the fretboard. I'm using this nicely figured piece of ebony here. Then I cut in all the fret slots, I radius it, and I cut out the outer contour. Now at this point you might notice that those aren't regular frets and those aren't regular fret slots. And that's because this is actually going to be a fretless guitar. So what I'm installing here are just simply some inlay markers. I'm using some brass here, and those mark where the fret positions would be, just so it is a bit easier to play. But the whole thing will be perfectly smooth, allowing you to create some really unique sounds. I'm using black CA glue here to install these pieces. That will just make sure that it blends nicely with the ebony, and any gap that might have been there kind of completely disappears. I've also cut the cavities for some inlay here, and this is where some of the more design elements come in. Here, those are actually numbers signifying the different fret positions, except they are of course not regular numbers, they are Egyptian hieroglyphics. So the top of the guitar, so the neck and the headstock, will be Egyptian themed, while the body, as you will see in a second, will be more of a Nordic Celtic theme. The process I'm using here is using some brass powder, and then I'm using CA glue to kind of harden it. Now I did it this way because I've seen it done before and I have done it before, but in retrospect it would have been better to mix the metal powder with epoxy, put it in there, and then I would have had to wait like until the epoxy dries, which is why I used CA glue to be able to continue right away. But epoxy would have saved me quite a bit of work later, filling voids and having pieces that are not quite stuck together, as you'll see in a second. Now before radiusing the fretboard, I'm using just a regular flat end mill to cut off the excess of these brass strips that are glued in. They were protruding quite a bit, so using the round bullnose end mill right away would have probably created some problems and might have even ripped out the pieces. So doing this bit of cleanup first, just make sure that the whole thing goes smoothly. Now at this point I've also already noticed a bunch of voids that opened up, and I'm using more of the brass powder and more super glue to fix it here. This will not be the last time I have to do this. I went back and forth quite a few times until I finally got it filled. Safe to say next time I will use epoxy. Then to create the actual radius of the fretboard, I'm using a 3mm bullnose end mill, which allows me to go along the fretboard in fairly small step overs and get a very nice and smooth surface. Now I still have to sand it later to get the perfect radius and have it nice and smooth, but this saves me still a lot of time. At this point I'm also using some more brass plate here to cut the plate for the output jacks. And you heard this correctly, output jacks plural, actually 3. 2 of them are going to be analog for both the piezo pickups as well as the magnetic pickups, and the third one will be a MIDI output. So not only is this the most out there design that I've ever done. It is also by far the most complicated electronics install I've ever done. There will be a whole bunch of different knobs and switches and controls just to be able to have a basic control of what is going on here. This, on the other hand, should allow this guitar to be truly versatile and create some sounds that you have not heard out of a regular guitar ever before. With the fretboard all done, we can get it glued onto the guitar. And while I usually like to use vacuum bags, with the whole neck being attached to the guitar, it's a bit harder. So here I just used some elastic straps to get it clamped down nicely. This also works, but it's a bit more finicky. Then the fretwork, if you want to call it that, on this guitar is actually super simple. All I have to do is level the fretboard so it's nicely flat, as well as making sure that the radius is correct. And after that, I'm done. No crowning the frets, no beveling the edges, none of that. But believe me, this guitar still took a lot of time to complete, even if I can save a couple of hours on the fret work. Now you might have noticed before that while I talked a bunch about this being a semi-hollow guitar and semi-acoustic, I went ahead and glued a solid top onto all of these holes, which would not allow any of the sound to come out. So that's what I'm fixing here. I'm cutting in all of the sound ports, and those will line up with cutouts in the stone top as well. So I just use the stone top as a template, and the reason why I didn't cut these on the CNC is because they're super narrow, and using an end mill is quite hard for this. So since I didn't know how well the stone was going to line up as well, I decided to just do it by hand, and using an X-Acto knife on this fairly soft alder works really well to get those cut in. Then next I'm tackling the output jack plate. After we've machined it, now I'm just kind of bending it to follow the contour of the body, as well as cutting in the recess into the body that will allow everything to go in. Part of it I was able to cut on the CNC before when I cut out the bulk of the material, but the rest I'm just doing here by hand. It's a bit of a mixture of both. Sometimes it's easier to do stuff by hand when you don't know exactly how well the 3D model will line up with the real world, as kind of compound errors will stack up quickly, and then things will not line up, and fixing it is a lot more work than doing it by hand to begin with. This process also is a kind of a nice primer to get a bit more refamiliarized with cutting this older wood by hand with chisels and X-Acto knife. As you will be able to see, the next step is going to be a lot of chisel work and a lot of X-Acto knife work, all done by hand. And that's because the whole top will be 3D carved. I went ahead and drew on the design with a pencil here. We already sketched that out, of course, before, but then kind of putting it on the guitar, seeing it actually in the real world, some of the design had to be adjusted. So I used the pencil to draw it on, sent the pictures to the client, then we went back and forth a bit, adjusted some small things before I'm now going ahead and cutting it in. So first I'm scoring around all of the design. So what is dark here is going to be the raised part, and then all the light part will be cut away. So I'm cutting the outline with an X-Acto knife. That way I can try to minimize any sort of tear out and get a nice and clean edge. The design here is of course inspired a lot by Norse mythology, as well as Celtic motifs with these kind of Celtic knots that are weaving around different controls, as well as you can see some runes that will be carved in there as well as there's going to be runes all around the outside of the guitar. This matches up with the runes in the center and the eye in the center of the guitar. Then after I've done a section with the X-Acto knife, I go in with a V-shaped chisel to go next to that line I made and start hawking out some of the material. This allows me to get very close and get some actual material away so I can more easily clear the center without risking to kind of go too far. I then use the X-Acto knife once again to kind of score a bit deeper, as I want some basically vertical walls to really give a stark 3D effect instead of just kind of some slight engraving. To remove the bulk of the material, I'm using some inlay chisels that I got from Crimson Guitars, and these are really convenient. I have a 1mm and 2mm size, and I used both of them extensively here. Not only are they super narrow chisels, they also have kind of like an S-shaped design almost that allows you to more easily access the bottom of a cavity and really get it nice and flat. After I've cut the outline of all the different shapes, I go in and actually make the Celtic knots weave over top of each other. Right now, before they were just flat, and now I'm kind of doing the 3D effect where it looks like they go below each other to really sell the effect. This step was actually really fun, as it didn't require a whole lot of carving but made a huge difference to the overall look. The step that came after this was a lot less fun. I've already spent many hours carving this, but it's still all fairly rough carved. So I had to go back in with an X-Acto knife and the small chisels and try to clean it up as best as possible. There's a lot of very small areas here that all kind of need to have a nice and flat bottom for it to look good, and I don't want any frayed edges or anything like that. So I spent probably another half a day just cleaning everything up after the rough covering was done. I also used some sandpaper, but it's really hard to properly get in there with sandpaper, so most of it is just done with the blade. With the carving done, we really liked how it looked, but there was just not quite enough contrast. If you were looking close, you could nicely see all the 3D effects, but from a bit further away, they started to disappear more than we liked. So decided to actually stain some of the alder here, and mainly staining the background. This really makes it pop a lot, and while the color difference here looks really stark in the beginning, actually once the whole thing is lacquered, it will not be quite as extreme, as the alder itself will also darken a bit and line up closer. It almost doesn't look stained in the end, it just kind of looks like the background is a bit darker, maybe a bit more dirty, or the front is a bit worn, but it just makes the whole thing pop like crazy. To apply the stain, I'm just using a tiny brush here and brushing it on, trying to be nice and even, but it doesn't have to be quite perfect, as while I did my best to carve it, all of this of course is hand carved and looks hand carved, so slight kind of differences in darkness are perfectly normal. To get the electronics cavity cover to match, I used the laser to engrave my logo into it, as well as a name for the guitar and a bit of a decorative border. The original idea was actually to also 3D carve the electronics cavity. The original idea was to 3D carve this cavity cover as well, but it ended up that the magnets that are going to hold it in place are exactly where the weave was supposed to be, and the amount of material above the magnets is very small, so we would have just cut straight through, so that had to go, and we settled on just engraving it instead. And with that, the woodwork is complete and we can start the finishing. Now, since the aim for this guitar is to look natural and kind of as raw as possible, for once the finishing process is actually very simple. We're gonna go for like a nice matte finish. So I'm still spraying a high gloss here first, and the reason for that is just because I can spray the high gloss a lot thicker without it kind of getting that as nice. So I'm putting on like two nice, fairly decent layers that will give a lot of protection to the wood and also soak into it nicely. That just makes the surface strong, it makes it durable and look nice. After that, I kind of scuff sand it flat and go back in with a matte finish, and this will end up looking basically like there's no finish on it at all, which is the goal. But of course, there still is a good layer of finish on there that makes sure that this guitar looks as good in 5 years as it does right now. For the fretboard, I'm just using some fretboard oil, as I do for all of my guitars. That makes sure that the wood looks nice and beautiful, but at the same time it's not a finish that can scratch with the strings going against it. So if it does get scratched, which it probably will since you are playing directly on the wood, it is very easy to just apply some more oil again in a year and it will look just as new again. I then go ahead and also put some shielding paint on all of the cavities, both the pickup cavities as well as the electronics cavity. It is not strictly necessary, but I like to do it both for shielding purposes as well as to just make it look nice. If the cavity is a dark black, you will not really focus on it and it just looks nicer, whereas if it was wood colored and there's some burrs in there, you might notice a lot more. Installing the bridge here, you can see that there's also a huge massive wire, and that is due to the piezo pickups, of course. So every saddle has one of those. They are from Technology for Musicians. I like to use their bridges on a lot of my guitars, and they offer a piezo option. Then I can go ahead and get it stringed up for the first time and kind of see how it looks. But before I celebrate too much, there is a huge task of wiring. And you can see that there is a million different controls, a bunch of switches, and all of the piezo stuff as well. So here's a quick time lapse of some of the work, but this is definitely by far the most complicated wiring I've ever done in a guitar. Now, with this guitar almost complete, this has been a really enjoyable process. It really allowed me to kind of think outside of the box, talk back and forth with the client. One of us had an idea, then the other one iterated on the idea. So we together came up with this guitar, which neither of us could have come up with on our own. And this is a really fun process. So I hope you like the end result, and you can leave a comment down below. What do you think? Would you like a guitar like that? My details are down below, so you can contact me if you would like to build your own crazy custom instrument. Now, I'm not going to build you this exact guitar. This is a one-of-one, but I can build you something in a similar style or based on whatever other ideas you might have. And just to make sure that you really want to subscribe, the next build, which is already basically done, will have even more crazy electronics than this one. Now, not as many controls, actually 0 controls, but a lot more pickups. So if that has piqued your curiosity, do subscribe here, and that way you will not miss when that video drops. And I think you will like it quite a bit. So with that said, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to both of my channels, and I'll see you guys next time.